Hey guys, this is Cody Meeks here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Friz, giving you kind of a brief overview, and then we're going to delve into the rules so you can learn how to play Friz and grab your friends and start playing. So, to start things off, Friz is comprised of 4 quarters. Each of those quarters are 10 minutes long. If you're playing with stoppages, If you're playing without stoppages, then it'll be 4 12-minute quarters to kind of make up for that. Okay. There is a halftime. At halftime, the players will swap sides of the field to ensure a fair game in case one side seems to have some sort of inherent advantage over the other. And to start off a game, you'll basically flip the disc like you would in Ultimate. Someone's going to make a call on the disc, and whoever wins the disc is going to either decide if they want the disc first to start off the game, or if they want to pick their side of the field. Now, whoever starts the game off at halftime, the other player will start the second half, unless the second quarter ended in penalty shots, in which the person who is doing the penalty shots will get the disc in the third quarter. Not really an issue for when you're playing with stoppages, because you'll be stopping the game when you're doing your penalty shots. But if you're playing without stoppages, then basically if the quarter ends in the middle of penalty shots, then that player will go ahead and start off the game in the next quarter. But we'll get into that later. So ultimately, the goal of the game is for you to throw the disc and skip it somewhere in this area called the skip zone, which is the red rectangle right here in the middle, and get it to land somewhere in your opponent's score zone, which is this kind of trapezoidal area that eventually straightens out. Okay, and if you successfully do that, you get a point. If your opponent successfully does that against you, they get a point, and the goal of the game is to get as many points before time runs out. Whoever has the most points wins. Okay, now we're going to label some of these areas just to familiarize you while we are kind of talking it through, but each opponent will be standing in their respective score zone at the beginning of the game, and throughout most of the game they will be predominantly in their score zones. Okay, we have penalty boxes, which are here and here. We have pitch lines, and these pitch lines are essentially the first lines, or the front of the player's score zones. Okay. We also have penalty lines, which basically make up the ends of the skip zone. And that's pretty much all you need to know. So just so you're familiar with those terms as I say them throughout this instructional video, and of course I will probably highlight them again as I talk about them, but this is just kind of to familiarize you with those terms. Now, like I said, the goal of the game is to skip the disc in the skip zone and get it to land in your opponent's score zone. Okay, now you have to make a legal throw, and this part's pretty simple. If it's not a legal throw, it's a penalty. Okay, so it's either a legal throw or a penalty. Now, to be a legal throw, it has to meet these criteria. The initial contact with the ground must be within the skip zone. So when you throw the disc, it has to land somewhere in here first. Okay, ideally you want to skip it and get it in your opponent's score zone. But if you hit it and it just flops over you, or if it rolls, it doesn't matter. It's still a legal throw as long as it makes initial ground contact somewhere in here. Okay. And the other criteria it has to meet is the thrower has to be standing within his respective score zone. Okay. So green over here can't make the throw from outside of his score zone. Even if he skips it in the skip zone and even lands it in his opponent's score zone, that's going to be considered a penalty because he threw it from outside of his score zone. Okay, so that'll be like a positional type penalty. The other one we talked about was a throwing penalty. You can also have a positional penalty from a defensive perspective. So when you go to catch the disc, you have to be standing behind your respective pitch line. So blue here has to be standing behind this line when he makes the catch. So if he comes up forward, he's a little eager, and he runs up here and he catches the disc, that's going to be a penalty on blue. Now what blue can do is he can stand right up on the line and lean over and catch the disc. That's fine as long as his feet remain behind the pitch line. Now if he falls over, that's going to be a different story, but he's probably not going to catch the disc. So those are the main ways you can get penalties. The other way you can get a penalty is more for like kind of sanctioned play or tournament play, and that's basically like an intentional delay of game. So let's say green here has the lead, and he's really stalling because he knows he has the lead, and he's really holding up the game. First he would get a warning, and then after that he would start getting penalties. A good rule of thumb, and what's actually in the rule book, is once green gets back in his respective score zone, let's say he had a run out there or he dove for a disc or something, once he gets back in a score zone, he has roughly 10 seconds to make his throw. And he should be, not necessarily in a hurry, but he should be, making an effort to get back to the score zone in a reasonable amount of time, okay? So that one's very unlikely. The main ways in order of frequency is a throwing penalty. So you basically, your first initial ground contact hits not inside the skip zone, or a positional penalty, which is more than likely going to be on the thrower, probably stepping over his pitch line as he makes the throw, but he has to be within a score zone to make the throw, okay? So that pretty much sums up how to make a legal throw, okay? So like I said, if it's not a legal throw, it's a penalty. So now we can go back to a legal throw. Let's assume it's a legal throw for all these, so it skips in the skip zone. There's a couple different outcomes that can happen once you make a legal throw. But basically, if you make a legal throw, it's either going to be a score, out of bounds, or your opponent's going to catch it. It's going to be one of those three things, okay? And it's going to be determined which one of those it is. Basically, what happens after the discs passes your opponent's pitch line. Okay, so if your opponent does not catch the disc after the disc passes over the skip line, or after the pitch line, basically where that disc lands is going to determine what it is. So if you skip it here in the skip zone, it's a legal throw, and it lands out here next, that's going to be out of bounds. It's not going to be a penalty, but it's not going to be a point. Now, if you skip it in the skip zone and it lands here and your opponent doesn't catch it, that's going to be a point. So that's pretty simple. Now you may be asking, well, what if it skips here, here, and then here? That's still going to be a point. It really doesn't matter until after your frisbee, well, the first skip has to be in the skip zone, but after that, it doesn't really matter again until after it passes over your opponent's pitch line, okay? So it can skip multiple times before it gets to the pitch line, and it can even skip outside of the field of play. So it can skip here, and then here, and then here, and still be a point, okay? It just matters that its first skip is in the skip zone, and then wherever it lands after it passes over your opponent's pitch line, okay? Now, your opponent can catch the disc anywhere behind his pitch line, like we said before. So he can be standing out here and catch it. But let's say he's straddling the line. If he's straddling the line and then he makes a fumble and he drops the disc outside of his score zone, because he was standing in his score zone, that's going to be considered a point, okay? Now, if he would have jumped in the air from here to here and he made contact with the disc while he was in the air, and it landed outside of his score zone, and then he landed completely outside of his score zone, that would be considered out of bounds, and no point, no penalty, okay? But if he does land back in his score zone, then it would be a point. So if he's in midair, it's going to matter where he lands and where the disc lands, okay? Because if he's in air and he fumbles the disc and he lands completely outside of his score zone, but the disc still lands in his score zone before touching the ground, or that's its first contact with the ground, that's going to be a point. So it depends where your opponent's standing, or if he's in the air, where he lands, and then also where the disc lands if he doesn't catch it, okay? So I hope that makes sense. If there's any questions, any further questions, or if you want any clarifications, you can leave some questions in the comments. But I'm going to keep on going. So other ways it can be considered out of bounds is a roll or a skid. And the technical term for this is that the disc maintains ground contact while passing through your opponent's pitch line, okay? And that's normally done with a roll or a skid. So if you can imagine this being the ground and this being your pitch line, if the disc just kind of rolls across the pitch line, then that's going to be maintaining ground contact while it crosses the pitch line. So that's going to just be considered out of bounds, dead disc. It's not going to be a penalty, but it's also not going to be a point. It could also just kind of skid over the pitch line, so if it's dragging across the ground all the way and it doesn't really hop, that would be considered a skid, and that's also out of bounds, so no penalty, no point. And then lastly, the other way it can be considered out of bounds is, let's say green over here skips it, it's a legal throw, but when he skips it, it goes super high. There's no chance he could possibly reach the disc, even if he jumped and had his arm extended all the way. If there's no chance that he could have even touched the disc, then that would be considered height rule, which is out of bounds. No penalty, no point. That's going to be a little subjective, but it's done a lot like Ultimate. Whoever's closest to the discs makes the call, okay? And hopefully you guys are playing with some good sportsmanship there. Now, in tournament play, there will be a ref who will call that. So we talked about penalties earlier, but we didn't talk about what happens if you accrue too many penalties. First off, how many is too many? Well, that's 3 penalties. Every time you accrue 3 penalties, so let's say green did it in this case, then your opponent gets to take penalty shots, okay? And this is a lot like penalty kicks in soccer. You essentially did something wrong, so they get a chance to get a free point, or 3 points in this case. So basically, once you get 3 penalties, your opponent gets to serve 3 penalty shots consecutively. So normally this game's played in a very fluid motion. Green's constantly throwing at blue, or green will throw at blue, and then whether or not he scores, blue's throwing right back trying to score on green, and it's just a very back and forth motion, much like tennis. Now, during penalty shots, like we said, green got 3 penalties, so blue is serving the penalty shots. He gets 3 throws in a row, and green does not get to try and score in between them. So oftentimes what will happen is, blue will make his throw, green will just toss the disc back. Blue makes his throw, green tosses the disc back, blue makes his throw. And blue also gets to start off the regular gameplay again. So he gets 3 penalty shots, and then he gets to start the regular gameplay off again. Now, if you're playing with stoppages, penalty shots are a great example of when you would apply stoppages. Time would stop in this manner, or for penalty shots if you were playing this type of game. If you're not playing with stoppages, then time obviously continues. The other big advantage to getting penalty shots is blue would actually be able to go all the way up to his penalty line to make his throws. So essentially, during penalty shots, your penalty line serves as your new pitch line, okay? And then the third big advantage is that the thrower cannot accrue penalties during penalty shots. So if a blue makes his throw and his first skip is out here, it's not going to be a point. It's still not a legal throw, but he does not accrue penalties during his penalty shots. Now, with that being said, green here can still accrue defensive penalties. So if he catches the disc forward of his respective pitch line, then green will still get a penalty. It's just after his penalty shots are served, then green will start back with 1 penalty instead of 0 penalties, okay? Or, he could start back with 2 penalties, or he could even get 3 penalties during penalty shots and accrue more immediately, or be served more penalty shots immediately, okay? Very unlikely, because defensive penalties are uncommon, but it can happen, okay? So those are the big advantages to being able to serve penalty shots, is that you can't get penalties, so you can try riskier throws. You get 3 throws in a row, and you get an extra 5 feet. You can step all the way up to that penalty line, okay? And then you get to start back the timed play, okay? Or the regular game play if you're playing without stoppages. All right, so that's basically, for the most part, that's the game. You're throwing back and forth. If it's not a legal throw, you get a penalty. If you accrue enough penalties, your opponent gets penalty shots. I think that's pretty much everything. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can either comment on this video. You can email us at frizvision@gmail.com. And some other news, you might notice that we are currently updating all of our content. We're revitalizing our channel a little bit because we are preparing to launch a Kickstarter in March. This Kickstarter is going to have a lot of fun things. We're going to have custom discs. We're going to have custom athletic tees. We're going to have the Fris fields, the mobile Fris fields that we make and we play on. We're going to be selling those through the Kickstarter. And then also, and most importantly, the Professional Fris Players Association membership cards. So this Kickstarter is going to run 45 days after the beginning of March, and we're basically going to kick off our inaugural professional play season. So anybody can become a member, kind of like the PDGA. So anybody can buy a membership and compete, and you'll just basically send us, whenever you do play a game with another rated player or another member, you send us a score, and we will adjust the rankings. And basically, the top players at the end of the season, we plan on doing kind of a tournament of champions. So we're excited to announce our Kickstarter launch, and we hope to see you there. We hope you get some goodies, and we really, really want you to get the Professional Fris Players Association membership so we can actually have a successful first season. Thanks again for watching. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Try and check out some of our other videos. We have some good footage of gameplay. We have some other explanation videos. And if you want another video of something that you don't see on our channel, feel free to reach out or comment and say that you want something else. Thanks.